Hello and welcome back to another episode of Property-Pxrn, the premium property podcast brought to you by your hosts David Lindley.
And I'm Matt Giggs.
And today our guest, our star, is none other than Paul Jamieson, the sales director of 20EA, fresh off the back of his big win at the Negotiator Awards for, what was it, Supplier of the Year, yeah. Congratulations.
I wasn't going to mention that though.
Yeah, I bet you weren't.
You put all your notes in.
He's brought his award with him.
This is thank yous, yeah.
Well, thank you for being here with us. We really appreciate it. And you know me, I love my stats as well. So I'm doubly pleased to have you with us. So I guess two things before we kind of get into that. One is just talk to us about what 20EA do for the uninitiated. I'm a big fan of 20EA, been a customer for a long time. But for those who don't know what you do, what does it do?
Yeah, so very simply, we're property and home mover data experts. We've got a ton of data all around the home mover. And interesting, we're not just in property. The business actually started many years ago in retail. So obviously, if you think of, we work with some big retail clients still to this day. And if you think when someone moves home, they are such a valuable person to estate agents, to removal companies, to people, carpet businesses, blinds, anyone. There's lots of businesses and sectors involved in the home moving journey. So we kind of recognise that, and actually we've still got a lot of retail clients to this day, but we focus primarily on estate agents and suppliers of estate agents to deliver data in a whole host of ways to help them grow their businesses.
And is that what 20CI is? Because I always get confused between 20EA and 20CI.
So 20CI groups more the retail clients. And that's still a big part of the business, and the EA is estate agency.
Okay, and so for clients of 20EA, what do they get from you? Just to put, and I'm saying this not kind of as a plug, but just to put the rest of the conversation in context of what 20EA provide to agents. So we say data, but that's a bit meaningless without a way to interpret it.
Yeah, so there's four main data sets. Is probably the easiest way to describe it. So the first one is our agent listings data set. So we track every single property as soon as it comes to market, so instruction all the way through to completion, and everything in between. So we know when there's had a price change or a fall through or withdrawn. So we've been collecting that data for a number of years, but that data goes back to 2016 easily. So you can kind of historically go back and look at across the whole of the market. So we cover 99.6% of the market. Mm-hmm. So it's as a whole of market view as you can get. As a business, we've got 4,500 data sources. So, but that's probably one of the things we're most famous for. And we sell a product called Insight, which allows you to strategically go in and look at your town, either on a national level, regional level, or local level, and highlight your own performance, look at your competitors, look at areas for growth. So that's one area. Second area is we've got a property attributes data set. So we call it Domus, which I think means home in Latin. Not a big one for Latin, but I think that's why it's called that. And again, that looks at everything about the property. So we've got data on 33 million residential properties, again, across the whole UK. And for each one of those properties, we know about 400 things about that property. So one attribute might be number of bedrooms or the standard stuff, but stuff that might be useful to like premium agents listening to this, we could identify every property in the country with a helipad or an indoor and outdoor swimming pool or an ARGA or stuff like that. So there's electric vehicle points now. So that's a big thing. So there's literally 400 variables like that where we know, regardless of where it's on the market or not, everything about that property. And obviously there's lots of use cases for that in terms of how you market to people or how you want to kind of attract people to your business.
So is that information an estate agent has access to?
Yeah, so they can do, yes.
And they produce a report? Is that how it works? Or?
Yeah, so we've got a product called Search where you can type in an address, click the property, and it comes up with some of those variables. We don't list all of them necessarily because it's a long list and some of them aren't.
So just like the key points.
Like septic tanks aren't that exciting to have. That's an example of one we have. But we've got all the data behind the scenes. So more and more what we do now as kind of the agency landscape's changed and CRM systems especially have improved is we do a lot more of it via API. So if you, for example, were interested in properties with swimming pools, we can kind of feed that into your CRM or refresh that feed each month and send you that data for you to then do what you want with it. So We do a lot more kind of, I suppose, bespoke data sales like that, which are quite interesting, and that allows the agent to do within reason whatever they want with that data.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting part. The third part, which I think is really interesting, is we've got a predictive AI model called Forecast, and that can actually predict people that are about to put their house on the market in the next 2 months. Now, we talk about this a lot. Obviously, there's only about 5% of properties, 4 to 5% of properties come to market in a year. But what this allows you to do for your town or region, we essentially score every property on how likely it is to come to market. So we know stuff about the property, we know market conditions, but more importantly, through our kind of other sides of the business, we know a lot of data on that home mover. So we might know how much they earn, if they've just had a second kid, they live in a flat, they might have lost their job recently. Again, hundreds of data points like that, which go into the model and essentially predicts how likely it is to come to market.
Wow.
And that's really valuable, because what we found is about 82% of all properties that come to market are what we deem off market. So they weren't previously on the market. The other 18%.
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so 100 properties come onto the market in a town.
Yeah.
82 are brand new.
Okay,
Yeah.
with the others being on with another agent.
The others, about 8% of a property that's switched from another agent to your agency.
Okay.
And then the others, usually multi-agency, which is a bit more prevalent in London. So that's the UK average. But the point I'm trying to make is, most agents I speak to put a lot, or if not all of their budget into that, trying to persuade someone that's already on the market to switch back to them. And it's a tiny part of the market, whereas actually,
talking about that,
if you, and the problem with that is, I mean, we're part of the problem space. We've got a solution for that. I'm not saying don't do it, because if you do it well, there's still it's a good, valuable way of gaining instructions. But it's such a saturated market now.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of doing it. And actually, if you're competing with 10 other people to win 8% of the market, it's a lose-lose, really. There's not much to gain there.
Yeah.
We're flipping it on the head. If we can provide you, these are the other 82%. Now, typically, you had no way of knowing who's coming to the market. You'd have to blanket drop your entire town.
And what do you do? Is you just get all the trends, their searches, like you said, the clicks, where they are.
Yeah.
And it kind of feeds into this place where those averages mean that they're this much closer to.
Yeah, it's looking at historic trends and the market data, what type of properties are selling right now, so supply and demand. What's the demand for 3-bed semi-detached houses as of this week? Like, we update the model updates every month. But again, the more important is everything about the homeowner. And again, the way I describe it to estates, good estate agents do this on a micro level. So if I'm an estate agent in my town, then I might know that Paul Jamieson's just had a second kid and we sold his house 4 years ago. And actually, we should get in touch with him because he needs to probably upsize. Good estate agents know this, but you can't possibly know that. If you're covering 100,000 chimney pots, you couldn't possibly know that at that level. So what essentially it does, it's not rocket science. It's kind of taking what a good estate agent does at a small level and supercharging it and basically giving you the answers. And it allows the agents to market and fish in the right pond. It's still not guaranteed to choose your agency. You've still got to come up with the right marketing messages. You've still got to do all the things. They've still got to want to work with you. But you've got a lot better chance long-term of growing your business by speaking to these people than, in my opinion, in the scrapping around in the touting lake.
Because you see, you've probably all seen pictures on socials of an agent's put up of when they've gone to a vacant property and they've picked up the 3 or 4 touting letters, all look exactly the same with the same barcode on and everything like that.
I've heard stories from agents where 10 letters have landed on the same day because they're using the same supplier and a lot of those are the same wording, just with a different logo on. You can see why it turns off vendors and it's almost causing you more harm than good in a way.
But I like the fact that as a supplier, you're kind of off the fence as well, because it's quite easy to be on the fence. Oh yeah, you could do this, could do that. But no, and we just had a previous podcast guest was Mark Burgess, who's saying exactly the same thing as you. And obviously he comes from technology point of view. But you would say for your money, do not on-market correspondence communication using the predictive data.
Yeah, that's where we're encouraging, because part of our job is almost to be consultants to our clients. So yeah, we advise our clients to not divert all their spend there, but it should be the other way around. Most agents spend 80% of their budget on that, whereas actually 80% of it should be on these. And it doesn't have to, and obviously there's loads of different marketing channels. So typically agents still like direct mail, and I think actually there's still a brilliant place for direct mail. It works, actually works better than it did years ago because people have stopped doing it. So we're big advocates for direct mail, but we've got digital channels, we've got digital marketing. We're Sky AdSmart's partner on TV. So if you can actually target these people on Sky, and interestingly, you have a row of 10 houses, 4 of them would see your advert, 6 wouldn't if you were in the kind of in our propensity model. So there's loads of different clever channels, but again, Sky TV's not for every agent, it's probably for the bigger ones, but it's the stuff kind of we all know, like being the social media and offering good content, joining local Facebook groups, that kind of stuff. Like, so that's there, but alongside all that stuff, if you can kind of identify who's highly likely to move, we find that works really well.
Cool. Was that the third?
That's the third, and the fourth is our kind of AVM, so automated valuation model. So again, we don't sell this to estate agents necessarily, like like there's other suppliers that put widgets on the website and things like that. But it underpins a lot of our modelling, and actually we've just done a lot of work in the last year. So again, we can integrate that with some CRM systems, or you can have it. So it's quite useful for valuers before they go out to look and get a really accurate view of what that property is worth before they go out there. But we're actually doing a lot more in financial services. So it's actually been quite useful there. So it's probably the least relevant to estate agents, but it is in the background of everything we do, underpinning all the modelling which we do provide.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So cool. That's a pretty hearty introduction to what 20CI does, but that 20EA really, and 20CI is a whole other kettle of fish. But I just thought for some people that know about it, they're already going to know that. Some people that don't, it's worth explaining who you are and what you're doing. Being the data nerd that you are, it's nice to not be that for a change. You kindly put some numbers together for us on what's going on in the premium market as well. I'll share my screen with Matt so you can have a look at this as well.
Yeah, I thought because we're obviously filming this in December, so we've pretty much got the full year's view of what's happened. So I thought it might be useful just to look back at it. Yeah.
So we're just talking about £1 million plus properties.
Yeah, I picked that at random.
Yeah, just cool. It's good. A lot of this really surprised me actually. Did it surprise you?
Yeah, it was interesting when I looked at it actually.
So the first one, you got new instructions. So there's 12% more instructions over £1 million this year than there was last year.
Correct.
That's quite a significant number.
Yeah, I mean, just generally in the overall market, this year has been very strong. So last year wasn't a great year in terms of transactions, but yeah, what we're seeing across the whole country, instructions are up and demand's up quite significantly as well. So number of buyers and sale agreeds, but yeah, in some ways you might think it might not be as high in the premium end, but actually the premium end of the market has actually grown more than the overall market.
I was just about to ask you that.
It's slightly, I haven't got the numbers to hand, but last time I looked, it was about 8-9% in the overall market. So there's actually been higher growth above $1 million than the rest of the market, which is interesting.
And then a massive amount up on 2019. Was that just like the last non-COVID year? Is that why you chose?
Yeah. We kind of we've obviously got the data for the last 3 or 4 years, but it's so up and down. It's not really. So we always refer back to 2019 as the last normal-ish year. Yeah. And yeah, obviously there's 83% more properties than then, which is a massive number. I suspect some of that is house prices have gone up so much in that 5 years that actually naturally there's a lot more £1 million properties.
You say like not last normal year, and Matt, I'll ask you this as well. Would you say this year's been a normal year?
More so.
Yeah.
So so if you look at transactions, I suppose is what
that's how they normally measure it,
that's the key, I think, to an estate agent is how many deals are we actually doing and getting paid on.
Yeah.
So there's problems with land registry data and lags and stuff, but we can quite accurately predict it based on, because we can track sale agreeds live, and we know it takes on average 4 months for a sale agreed to become completion, and we know how many fall through before then. So actually, by June, we kind of know how many completions there'll be, even though land registry data for another year. But we think there'll be about 1.15 completions this year. So there was about 1 million last year. So about 15% up on last year. And if you're around 1.2 million, that's kind of normal. Yeah. We had 1.5, I think, COVID years, but that was crazy. But around 1.2 million is pretty normal. And we're going to be there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
The only reason it's not higher than that, because actually you can see from the demands there. So in terms of the actual number of sale agreeds above 1 million, it's 16% up on last year, which is a big number. But we started the year really sluggishly, because of the high interest rates and all the issues. And if you think there weren't many sales being agreed around this time last year, which then meant the first 3 or 4 months this year there were really low completions because they just weren't coming through. Whereas since in the second half of the year, these are flooding through now. And we've already got, I think, we're already 25-30% more sale agreeds going through at this time than last year.
Yeah.
So conversely, when we look at completions January, February this year, they'll be so much higher. So even though some people are still talking down the market for next year, we think there'll be more transactions. We think there'll still be more transactions because we're starting the year off in such a better place.
Yeah.
Unless there's something
happens.
radical, which we can't predict, but all things being equal, that we just suspect that might be more than 1.2 million next year.
Certainly, like we're filming now early December, like talking, just anecdotally talking to agents, everyone feels really quite busy at the minute. Matt, I don't know what it feels like for you, but it's
definitely, I think this time last year, I think people were like, fucking hell. Pipelines are the lowest.
Statistical analysis from Matt.
Pipelines are low. Yeah. And they were. I think there weren't many people that, it was low volume pipelines. So you're not a lot's coming out, not a lot's going back in. So then your overheads are, creeping up, and everyone understands that. So I think it's been the last 6 months where you've really seen completions kind of, certainly in our business, that's been the case.
Yeah. And even with the sort of that 4 or 5 months of doom and gloom foreboding the budget as well, I feel like since that's gone, things have kicked on again. And what I was going to say is be famous last words as well, but it feels like, so like this year we had general election, we had US general election, rates come down, even the Euros, and the budget. And it feels like next year, I can't see there's a huge touch everything.
We'll see.
Feels like there's not a load of distractions for the market.
But I think since that
I've jinxed it now. That's why he's trying to shut me out.
Well, since Brexit was the kickoff of all of the regularity of challenges that we face. Yeah. And as a society and in the housing market, I mean, they've just gone on and on and on. Yeah. So even when the general election was happening, didn't really do anything to the market because people knew who was going to get in. Yeah. And actually, to be honest, it was just really, I think it's definitely more resilient because of that. Yeah. And I think the major things that could affect or disrupt the market are mortgage rates increasing again. Yeah. That would be the major thing.
Yeah. And I don't think that,
I
think mortgage rates are going to stay pretty stable for the next year.
I think maybe even come down
slightly. I think people are, where it stalled before because people are used to those low rates and they've gone up. Yeah. Even I know they've creeped up slightly in some areas in the last few weeks, but I think people are just cracking on. That's what it is now. And people have short memories. It's like when it happens, it's like, oh my god, the mortgage rates are 4 or 5%. But then actually after a few months, you're like, oh, this is just it, and then let's get on with it now. So I think we're kind of in that stage.
So when we talk about demand here, we're talking about numbers of properties going SSTC.
Yep.
Up 16% year on year. So I mean, I don't know whether that makes sense or not, but there's a higher increase in buyer demand than there is in supply.
Yep.
So much for the cost of living crisis for the £1 million plus market.
Yeah. Agreed. There's I mean there's been that pent up demand from the year before, and it doesn't look like it's affected the premium market at all. There's still plenty of buyers out there. And we're in a quite nice market. Supply's up, demand's demand's up.
Yeah.
It's a similar amount, so it's just
exactly-
quite a good place to
Exactly,
be.
yeah. And I was saying this, it's the better markets are where it's level on both sides, rather than you've got one that's heavily weighted like it was in COVID. And so yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Talking about fall throughs here. So when we're talking about these being up, that means there are more fall throughs happening.
Yeah, but there's been more
Transactions.
There's been more sales agreed. Yeah. So actually, I don't think there's much to report there. You kind of probably expect
the net's still up 7%, isn't it?
Yeah.
So your net increase there.
But the one that, I mean, maybe I'm reading into this as something that isn't there, but to have 78% more fall throughs this year than in 2019, like, I don't know whether the transaction numbers were vastly different between this year and 2019, but that seems crazy to me. Does it not seem crazy?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's probably down to the
length of time.
The length of time it takes to transact now.
Yeah.
So the premium end of the market takes slightly longer to find a buyer. So I think I think it's about 3.3 months. So about 100 days to find a buyer.
Yeah.
Which has gone up because a couple of years ago you were finding buyers in 30, 40 days on average. So there's, even though demand's still there, the premium end, it takes a bit longer to find that buyer because there's less buyers for those expensive properties. Yeah. But it's the sales progression piece, the time to actually exchange and all that side is just still 4+ months on average.
Yeah.
So
the
when you think
opportunity for something to go wrong.
so I think compared to 2019, that it's getting longer to sell the property, and the longer it goes on, I mean, the fall throughs can happen for a variety of reasons, but one of the big ones is the longer it takes to go on. Yeah,
chains, a lot of chains.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's just a feature of the whole market, to be honest.
Yeah. Are you finding that, Matt, in the premium and the resi market, the fall throughs are?
Yeah, there's a fair amount. There is definitely, and mortgage changes, rate changes, but normally to do with the bottom end of the market.
Okay.
So you get the challenges down there.
Yeah.
The interesting one for me, which I kind of touched on, was exchanges. So we've talked about how good the market's been this year, but then we might have some people, some business owners going, hang on a minute, my bank account doesn't look like that. And actually, exchanges are only 6% up still. So in terms of actually banked revenue, you might not be seeing much of a difference to last year, which was quite bad. But the reason is because all those transactions are going through now.
I was going to say, it's just a time lag.
So it's just...
If you were to do this in 6 months...
So if you're sat watching this thinking, I'm going to pack it all in, just wait a few more months. Q1, all that money should start rolling in.
Put your money on black. But you've got here as well, I mean, this is quite interesting. When you look at exchanges, like you say, there's that lag, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it is linked still with the fall through number, because obviously there's many chains that we've put back together again. So you've normally, I mean, we've got I think it's 92 days average for a no chain. So when we've got a chain sale, it's about 122 or 127 days for the sale to go through. That's once it's agreed.
Yeah.
And then 93 or 95 for no chain.
Yeah.
And you just know that those lags create doubt, don't they? So if you've got people in chains that are waiting,
for sure,
and you've got 3 or 4 clients waiting, one is going to go, do you know what? I'm out of this.
Or something happens.
We'll do it again next year or the year after. So it's interesting how that's obviously the knock-on effect. But once it gets turning, which is what you're saying, Paul, and it is starting to turn over.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting one because sometimes at the premium end, it's kind of cash buyers and there's less chains, and actually it can move fairly quickly still. But yeah.
I thought it was interesting talking about price changes here as well. I actually expected that to be slightly higher than that. Did you, Matt? Because you got a 12% increase in the number of. So I'm guessing that's not prices gone up that much. That's the amount of properties that have changed.
This was an interesting one. So price changes, which is primarily reductions. It's not.
It's not a reduction.
There's not.
There you go.
It's a change. You're changing the strategy.
Yeah. Okay. I'll stick with price change. I was surprised when I looked at this. Hopefully, I got the numbers right. But it seems like there's less price changes above $1 million.
Yeah.
Because actually,
comparatively,
if you look at the overall market, price changes has been a massive feature this year.
It's like 40%.
And the reason being, there was just that first half of the year, people just, estate agents or vendors, whichever way you look at it, were putting on properties way too high, and that level between kind of we track obviously asking prices and actually the sale agreed price, and that the bigger that gap, the more unrealistic vendors are being, and it was a big gap, and stuff wasn't selling as quickly. So that there were loads of price changes in the first half of the year. I think second half of the year that's calmed down a bit.
Okay.
But it still is more prevalent, I think, under 1 million than over 1 million. I don't know. Perhaps you could explain that for me.
Oh, I wish I could, because I was expecting there to be just as much in the way of price reductions above 1 million.
People that list their houses in the high end of the market are generally aware that their house is going to take some time, and that their buyer could come at any point, if that makes sense. Whilst as you go further down, there's more data, there's more stories, there's more volume, so you're able to kind of see if the price is about right after even just 4 or 5 weeks. As you go up the market and go into that 1.25, 1.5, where you go into those brackets, I think it's possibly that people are just thinking, do you know what, I'm just going to wait a bit longer.
Yeah. Interesting on price changes. So we look at this in detail, and you're more likely to sell a property that's had no price reduction.
Isn't that interesting?
And
is that at
is that
at this end of the market?
All ends, so any end. So properties that are priced, and it sounds quite cliche, but properties that are priced correctly are more likely to sell. So you're more likely to get it over the line. And I know I'm not an estate agent, but there's plenty of estate agents that their strategy is to price it high and reduce it. But the data we see, the end result for most people is actually completing on that. It doesn't seem to work. You're much better off pricing it more realistically, and it's more likely to sell.
I remember going to a conference, and I think Rightmove were talking about something similar, using similar data, and then came out of that session, and then people were saying, "Oh, isn't that obvious? If you price it well, it'll sell." I was like, I kind of think that you're missing the point, because like you could list it at an unrealistic price and reduce, but you're still more likely to sell it if you don't do that and price it properly from the start. It's just a different strategy, isn't it?
It's how you explain it.
Yeah.
It's that you're up against 2 other agents. Paul's going to go in there going sky high on the price.
He always does that.
David's more conservative. You know, you're always up against people, and I think that's the fear of agent, is that education of those statistics. Simon Gates and I always turn the stats into stories. How many stories would there be where you've priced it correctly from the off? You've got the maximum level of interest in the first couple of weeks. It's achieved a really good price. So yeah, totally.
Withdrawn numbers are up slightly. Any reason you think that might be?
No.
Just general activities brought it up?
Yeah, I just think it's kind of in line with the increase in activity. I don't think, again, it's an abnormal number. This
next one I thought was interesting, and you have to explain this to me. Likely to sell exchange.
Yeah.
What does this mean?
So this is really interesting. This I think shows how inefficient the UK property market is.
Yeah. Okay.
This was brought to life. I was picking my kids up from nursery this week, and one of my son's friends' parents, they're Polish, and so they're not really. This is the first time they've sold a house. And it fell through, and they're trying to move out of London to get into schools, and they were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this has happened." And I probably shouldn't have done this, but I was like, "Oh, there's actually a 1 in 2 chance of this happening. Like, it's actually more common than you think." I'm in the industry.
They've come to sympathy for the wrong person here. She's like, "I've got some stats."
And she was like, "I will move before Christmas." There, I was like, "No, probably not." Anyway, I was like, I should probably be quiet now. But just on this, like, so what I mean by the likely to sell figure is, for every 100 properties that come to market, how many of those go on to complete? And in the premium end of the market, so £1 million plus, only 34% of properties go on to complete.
Wow.
So when you list your property above £1 million, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of selling it.
How does that compare to the resi market?
So the overall market is 1 in 2. So it's about 52%.
Wow, okay.
So the overall market I'd still think that's bad.
Yeah, but it's more efficient than the premium market.
It's more efficient than the premium.
That's interesting, isn't it?
So, and
why do you think that is? Or Matt, what do you think as well?
I think people in that end of the market, in the nicest possible way, I still think there's a lag in every year, and I think you'll see that increase in the next 2 years, because I think if you go back a couple I don't know what the data was like on that stat. I mean, you've got here 3.3% in 2023, 4.4% in
what does that mean?
Does that mean
it's getting worse?
It's getting
worse.
Right,
okay.
So actually, that lag doesn't really apply then.
Yeah.
Because my thoughts were the main market that got hit in the last 2 years was that middle market.
Yeah. Okay.
Where their borrowing's going up significantly.
Yeah.
And that's where the buyers were coming into that top end of the market, which would be over £1 million.
Yeah.
So.
I think the obvious answer is there are less buyers.
Yeah.
If you've got a 200 grand house, there's going to be lots of demand and for that property. Whereas this includes everything of £1 million. Like,
but it's interesting though.
If you've got a £20 million house, I know that's at the super prime end. There's not many people that can afford to buy that. So,
but even with the timeline of people accepting the fact it's going to take time, it's still surprising.
Yeah,
I did one of our podcasts a few weeks ago. Now, so in England it's 50, 52%. Wales is similar, actually, it's about 54%. Scotland is about 79%.
Yeah,
so if you're watching this in Scotland, you got that number changes dramatically.
Yeah.
And Northern Ireland was even better than Scotland. So Scotland have a completely different legal system.
Yeah.
Basically, when you've offered, you're
locked in.
Locked in, and all the conveyancing's done, and you complete super fast. But Northern Ireland, who doesn't have that, they've got a similar system. They're exchanging on 83% of properties. So even within the UK, there's such major differences. And
what are the Northern Irish doing?
I can my explanation for that is it's to do with property price. So Northern Ireland property prices are a lot less.
Yeah.
And obviously this number is at the million plus. So I think there's a distinct correlation between the more expensive a property is, the less likely you are to sell, and the cheaper it is.
I suppose if you looked at that 52% figure, you could work that literally down and probably see that increase.
Yeah, you probably could.
But this is where there's a massive opportunity for good agents.
This is what I was going to say.
So if I was one of your estate agent clients, I'd hope that I'd have a better. Remember, these are averages; they're kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
You need to look at the data in your town and locality and what you're actually doing. But firstly, there's an education piece. I don't like my mum at nursery. If she'd gone into this knowing there was a 1 in 3 chance of selling, she might have looked at things differently.
Yeah.
I don't think the public know this, and you don't want to necessarily say, "Oh, look how bad the industry is," but there's an opportunity there to
totally agree.
Look, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of selling your property with this agent, or just generally. Yeah, I can show you that we've completed on 60% of our properties, 70%, whatever your figures. But if you show that you've got double the chance, triple the chance of selling your property with me. Yeah, and we've got all these additional benefits. Yeah. That's the kind of conversation that should be having, not 100%. I list on all the portals. And blah, 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 blah. I think there's loads of opportunity there to win tons of business.
The odds are against the vendor, so they need the help of a good agent more than they would do even in the typical resi market.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What do these next bits mean, PJ? The available stock, SSTC stock?
Yeah, so this is just the kind of as of now, how much stocks are currently available. Okay. So again, it's showing that there's still good compared to last year. There's more properties to choose from on the market right now, and the sale agreed stocks. Again, the interesting one. So there's 24% more properties going through to completion now than this time last year, which is obviously based on that. You'd expect completions, give or take, to be almost 25% up in Q1. Because all those, so that's why I think we're going to start the year really well in terms of banked money.
I was just looking at the bottom one there. Is that the bottom one?
Yeah.
That might make that will give some warm feelings to the market, won't it?
Well, let's talk about that now. Matt was looking at the online agents market share.
Yeah.
Do you want to read that out, Matt, for our listeners at home wanting 0%. Some comforting feelings?
I know it's 0.1%, but it's 0%, isn't it?
Well, it's 0.1%. I mean, it's 0% rounded up. There obviously are
0% rounded up.
On this occasion,
or rounded down.
I mean, how can you round that up? But anyway,
But
from 1.2% in 2019.
yeah. So remember, we're looking at properties above $1 million.
Yeah.
So back in 2019, 1.2%, which is still very small, but it's still more than you think. So online agents had that kind of 1.2% market share. Online agents typically do better lower in the market, but they have always had that kind of impact in the higher end of the market. Now, last year that was 0.1%, so which isn't a lot, and it's gone down even further to 0%. So there are literally going to be a handful of properties above $1 million going to online agents. Now, the obvious answer here is the demise of quite a popular, well-known one, and it kind of is in line with them shrinking market share, and it kind of links in with that. But
what is I appreciate I can just ask you questions that's impossible to answer all day, but like, do you know what the market share is for whole of market for the online agents, roughly?
It's about 3 or 4%.
Didn't that get up as far as 6
but
or 7?
It was higher than that. So in its heyday, it was kind of 7-8%, I think.
Oh,
wow. So interesting. So I'd say online agencies probably, I mean, you can argue when it came in, but I always think about 10 years ago was when the rise of purple bricks, and it kind of took storm, and they definitely had a major impact, and it shook up agency, and it definitely changed the landscape, and it's actually paved the way for, I think, lots of businesses and lots of changes, which are probably positive, regardless of what you think of the model. But I think what's been proven is very difficult to make money from that model, and actually, I think the fact that less vendors are choosing that model is still there and available. It's obviously not resonating with premium clients. And again, that's an opportunity for more traditional estate agents. But it looks like some have tried it and again, actually, I need more help or hand-holding, or I haven't got the time to do this myself, and actually it's not going to work. And everyone's reverting back to more traditional type agent.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I kind of think that it was never really, maybe I'm wrong, but designed for that end of the market anyway.
No,
it didn't feel like.
Yeah, that. I don't think it's never had a massive kind of impact at the top end.
But it'd be really interesting to see, I don't know how you'd ever find this out, but the total marketing spend of those companies compared to their market share. It feels like one of the major problems with it is the cost of acquisition so high. So you have to have a big marketing budget with the tap turned on to keep the customers coming in. And when that tap turns off.
The top end.
Yeah. No, I just think in the market. Yeah, for online agents. Yeah, I just think it's hard to compete with independent agents.
Without picking anyone out, you're right. Some of these businesses spent tens and hundreds of millions of pounds, and when they are spending that on marketing, their share goes up. But when the money pot runs out or they stop doing it, it goes down straight away. And and that's why the self-employed model is a different phenomenon. So
that's a perfect segue. You've done this before.
Because the self-employed model is kind of, I suppose, if we look at that was online was the big trend 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The current buzzword self-employed.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that grow in all parts of the market and in all regions. And that's different to when online came. So when online agents came, they had pockets of strength. So they had certain regions where it really resonated and others where they didn't really.
Yeah.
The self-employed models, so what we do is we lump together all the self-employed models and as if they were like one group. So then we measure their share, and we've looked at this quite close this year. And yeah, that's...
Have you? Because I bet that's really hard to measure.
It is. So overall, they're over 2% of the market now in terms of market share. That's grown about 30-40% year on year, and like 600% since 2019. And that's going to continue to grow. I think we're probably undercooking that number a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say,
because the problem we have as a business is we can identify all the large ones and even the regional ones, but what we're finding now is there are new self-employed models popping up every week.
Yeah.
And even traditional agents are bolting on a self-employed element to their traditional agents.
I was gonna say.
So not every agent, some agents are selling more in the traditional way in the self-employed.
Yeah.
So we are, I don't mind saying it, we're definitely undercooking that number. It will be higher. It's just we can't really keep up with it or keep tabs on it.
I was going to say, like, imagine gigs and co. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but have someone that comes on as a self-employed agent.
And on a local level, the numbers are quite small, but actually, if that's happening in every town and county, they actually add up to quite a significant amount of market share.
But I think that's, I mean, that comes on to another subject. But yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. You can see that rise just in the local levels.
But, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this, it looks like that's happening less in the premium market than it is in the whole of market.
Yeah, their market share in the premium market is 1.4%, whereas it's above 2% in the overall market. So it is lower, but it is growing.
Yeah, it's definitely growing. I mean, it's crazy to call this low, but the self-employed agents' market share growth since 2019 is 194%, which is crazy. But then you said it's 600% across the whole market. So it's only growing a third as quickly as the rest of the market.
I think what you'll find is, so obviously if you look at London, so a lot of £1 million properties are in London. That's a lot of the concentration is anyway. I think that number will grow naturally because we're seeing the likes of EXP that everyone knows, they're getting more and more of a stronghold in London. Traditional companies like Douglas and Gordon, they're pretty much self-employed now. They're growing. You've got Movely. You've got some quite nice self-employed kind of agents opening up in London. So I think we're just looking at above $1 million. I think that will grow and continue to grow.
Yeah.
But I think go slightly off piece there, but it's an interesting time, I think, agency, because
it really is.
You've got the online's kind of demise. You've got traditional agents going, what should I do? You've got the self-employed model, which is really resonating, and actually it's really attractive to, if you're a good valuer, a good agent, you can see the attraction to that model. You've got the M&A side, the consolidation. We've not talked about, we're concentrating on sales here, but the lettings side is a whole kettle of fish in terms of the kind of problems on the left side and that consolidation and just these monster private equity firms just hoovering up letting agents. There's obviously a big one today.
We're dating this, but Le Monde Group bought KFH.
Lehman bought KFH.
I think, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I think it said that was 14,000 properties under management. That's a hell of a portfolio.
Yeah. And we were at a conference where your value in, if you own a business, your value is in your lettings book. And obviously Lehman, but there's plenty of others that are just snapping up any of these businesses that have strong letting books. Because that's what adds the value. But I think it's just, I think in London, especially if you think of London, I mean, you've got kind of Lehman, you've got KFH, and they got Chase Evans, I think, a few weeks ago.
Okay.
You've got Foxtons, you've got Dexter's Group, you got Emiria, who's a private equity firm that bought Chesterton's this year or last year. Yeah. Like the vast majority of properties being listed in London are owned by 3 or 4 companies now. And it's kind of becoming kind of professionalized and corporate. There's not, there's going to be, you've obviously got Connell's Group and Leaders Romans Group, Property-Pxrn Group, who are already big beasts. Yeah. So it's a really interesting space.
I want to just ask Matt something here, because there's like this landscape that has changed. You have kind of the corporate world, and then I feel like you've had that wave, and then you had the wave of the online, and I feel like you've got the wave of the self-employed. If you are a somewhat traditional, let's just say high street estate agency, how would you, which I think you probably are,
they've kind of existed under the wave, haven't they? Because it's an old school approach. You know, you've got an office, you've got a team of 5-6 people on average. So there is definitely, where we were speaking earlier about where they're going to optimize their business through AI, outsourcing, automation, lower overheads, increase human interactions, that kind of stuff. So they've got their own wave to come.
Okay.
Because I think where it's a struggle for these guys in the self-employed model is the vast majority don't earn net in year one what they ended up in their previous year salary.
Yeah.
And they're beginning to realise this. So you're not seeing, like it took, 6 to 8 years before people realised that, I don't want to be disrespectful, but selling your house online was a freaking nightmare for the majority of the time. There was some good reviews. Some. And then you went through these other trends. And this trend it's got legs, because it's giving people the opportunity to have freedom, flexibility, and all of those lovely things which we see on LinkedIn every day, picking up the kids and then doing a deal at night. But actually, the success of it is still dependent on someone either growing a business, because let's be honest, EXP aren't daft. They're going into building business teams. They want people to put their teams into the process, because they see that that's a more scalable way of them growing as well. Because if you're self-employed, year 2, what do you do if you've had a good year? Hire someone? That's hard. Train somebody up? Even harder. I haven't got the time. And then all of a sudden, year 3, you're burnt out. And this is where you've got, there are a lot of challenges for people to do it, depending on what level of success they want. Because, you know, it's not for everyone. But equally, I think there's a really strong, long-lasting place for the self. I think it will split itself. I think they'll probably be up to 10, maybe even 15% of the market in the next 3-5 years, realistically.
Yeah, I agree. This isn't a company view, so it's my own personal thoughts. But yeah, I just the trajectory they're on. I think it's going to be 20% of the market in the next 3 or 4 years.
And if businesses like ours will go, well, let's do the hybrid. You know, you've got employed, you've got business owner. Somewhere in the middle could work really well, because actually we cover these areas and we just want to dominate this part of the area so we can give people a head start. So I think there are movements and more creative ways of making self-employed roles within these existing brands.
I think the key to this conversation is the vendors, the end clients. So
absolutely.
So you kind of touched on it there with the onlines. I think some people have had pretty bad experiences and they're kind of left on their own to do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite with self-employed. Yeah. So even the top self-employed models, if you look at the number of people they have working for them and the number of properties they're listing, it's like 2 or 3 a month. So I'm working in my little town, I've got 2 or 3 listings, and I only get paid if they go through. I am really motivated to offer a fantastic service to that personal service, which is kind of what they all prey on. But I think it is true, and you want to get that through as quickly as possible, because that's when you get paid. It's not the owner of the business getting paid. It's you physically don't get any money, and you can't afford to live. So what we actually find when we look at the performance of the self-employed models, they typically sell quicker than other agents, and they have a higher success rate of going on to exchange.
Wow.
So, and that obviously filters through. If you had a vendor that's used an online agent and a self-employed agent, what you'll probably find is they'll typically have a fantastic kind of experience because of those things. Not for all, it's still very much on the person. There'll still be bad people who don't do that. Yeah. But generally speaking, the data points towards them selling more like to sell and selling quicker, which is at the end of the day is what most vendors want.
Yeah, it's good for the client.
Yeah, which is why I think it's going to continue to grow to an extent. I think the problem for self-employed agents is that obviously the ones that jumped in 4 or 5 years ago have had massive success and earning really well. But there's going to be that saturation point. There's lots of different self-employed models now, and actually if there's a downturn in instructions, you've got all the high street agents, and then if you chuck in maybe potentially 20 different self-employed models, all in the same agents in the same town, they're all going to be kind of scrapping and struggling. And I think you see a lot of these success stories on social media, but I think a lot of what you see is the creme de la creme, the kind of top 1%. And I think a lot of agents just think that's a lot of perhaps high street agents going, oh, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not earning 200 grand a month? Whereas actually, I think what you see is the top agent. And I was with an agent who banked 120 grand in a month, which is ridiculous.
Phenomenal.
I nearly chucked my job in, but that's not the norm. And I always think of it kind of in thirds. You've got a third doing really well, and out of that third, some doing extremely well. You've got a third who are just treading water, and it's going okay, but nothing spectacular. And you've got a third that are failing, not failing, but they've tried it and it's not working.
Yeah, it's not for them.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting.
It is interesting, and I was surprised. I don't know if that's a surprise or not, but the premium self-employed market share hadn't grown as fast as the traditional one, because I think that market is, if anything, better suited to a self-employed setup. You've got lower volumes, higher levels of service, which you get with a person. It's very hard to compete on a volume game as one person, but you can compete on a quality game as one person, because you are limiting the number of clients that you service. You're their personal trusted advisor from MA through to completion. That, to me, is a more sensible place for a self-employed person to be than trying to play the volume game, which I think would be very difficult.
I think what will be really interesting is to look at what. So we've already seen some quite big corporate groups looking at this kind of self-employed model. So Yopa have obviously launched an associate model. You've got LSL who are looking at it now.
Yeah.
What I think would be really interesting, because I agree, I think it's prime for the premium market. It should be perfect, but it's not growing as much.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what the real premium brands do. So your Savills, your Knight Franks.
Well, they're
because actually I know that they'll be keen on retaining top staff that they might have had 20 years who might be getting their heads turned, and it'd be interesting to see, do they go more down this route? I don't know, but
let's do another podcast.
That is an interesting point. It is interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
And they will.
Do you reckon though?
They've got to. I think their hands are going to be forced. They don't want to. Will they have to? Well, let's be honest. A lot of these guys are already set on. It's the social media, isn't it? It's a lot of it. They drive their personal brands out there through social media as well. So a lot of very experienced, good agents in that top end.
But it's an interesting point you make about social media, because I think I can't speak with any authority on this because I'm not in those businesses. But it seems like a lot of their social media is quite strictly controlled. That if you work in one of those larger, more corporate companies, especially in the premium end of the market, they're quite protective over what their teams
can and can't do.
Yeah. So somewhat makes it a little bit harder then to develop a personal brand. So anyway, that's interesting. Believe it or not, PJ, we're pretty well out of time. Can you believe it? Time flies when you're having fun in data.
I'm on my one-man mission to make data interesting.
Make data sexy
today. You've done it today.
Awesome, PJ.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Really enjoyed that. Just before we let you off the hook, we do have our ridiculous closing tradition. I think you're on Property-Pxrn, and everyone, whether they know it or not, has a porn star name comprised of your middle name and your first pet's name. So hit me. What have you got?
David Dillon.
Just weird.
Move on. Can't even change it up a little bit, can you? Dickie Dill.
Dylan. Dickie.
Oh, well, there's something there.
Dickie Dill.
Let's not pull that thread too much, shall we?
Leave that there. Edit.
PJ, thank you so much for joining us today, for going through that and the work you've done to put those numbers together. Really appreciate it. And if people want to find you or talk to you about 20CI's offering, I guess they can find you on your own podcast.
Yeah, we've got our own podcast. Yeah, better than this one. No, I'm joking. But no, you can visit our website. We've got contact forms, or find me on LinkedIn.
Good man.
Or in at some industry conference, or
I say property.
I was going to say pub, but I'm not drinking in a minute, so you might not find me there.
Yeah, you've changed, man. Anyway, PJ, thank you, and thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Property-Pxrn. We really appreciate it, and we will catch you in the next episode.
See you soon.
Thanks.